Everybody likes a guessing game, and this one's called Guess the President. You'll see the top 15 presidents as they were rated by Wikipedia in 2016. In fact, it was an aggregate ranking drawn from a number of sources. Number 15 on the list is the one on the left of the screen at the moment. I'm sure you'll have no difficulty at all in identifying him. But how about number 14? It turns out that he's Donald Trump's favourite president, even though he was a Democrat. In fact, he was the founder of the Democratic Party. Number 13, in my view, was one of the most important of recent presidents. Number 12. He's the most difficult one on this list to identify. In fact, he's generally regarded as being the least well-known of the important presidents. I'd be surprised if many of you get his name. Number 11 was the second president and father of the fifth president, the first of a couple of father-son combinations as presidents. Neither of the second two is on the list. I hardly need ask you about number 10. So number 9, you'll have a little more difficulty with him perhaps, particularly amongst the younger of you. Number 8 is another of the earlier presidents and probably the second most difficult to identify in spite of his relatively high ranking. I think he has a square in New York. Or gardens, maybe. Number 7 is a fairly recent president. The first of his two terms immediately followed the Second World War. Number 6 was president during the First World War. He was a Democrat. Number 5, well, there was one president in between number 6 and number 5. The president in between was President Taft, and president number 5 was president during the first years, the opening years of the 20th century. Number 4 is a president you should have little difficulty identifying. He was the third president chronologically, and he had a plantation in Virginia, as did the president coming up now. He must be the easiest of the early presidents to identify. And you shouldn't have any difficulty in identifying the highest ranking presidents on the Wikipedia list. Number 2 in 2016 and number 1 in 2016. Actually in 2017, I believe they've changed over. So number 2 is number 1 and number 1 is number 2. So, how did you do? We'll go through it again, this time with the names and the chronological order of the presidents concerned in red under the names. We'll start, as before, number 15. Number 15, of course, is Bill Clinton, 42nd president. Number 14, Andrew Jackson, the slave-owning Andrew Jackson, favourite of Donald Trump. Number 13, he's Lyndon Johnson, who brought in the civil rights legislation in the mid-60s. And here's James Polk, who gained the territories of California, Oregon and Washington Territory for the United States in the 1840s. And John Adams, father of John Quincy Adams. John was the second president. John Quincy was the fifth president. And here comes Ronald Reagan. And before him another Republican, Dwight Eisenhower, Ike. And number 8, another difficult one to identify, was James Madison, a Democratic Republican, as were most of the early presidents. Number 7, Harry Truman, president immediately after the Second World War. And here's Woodrow Wilson, president during the First World War. He's number 6 on the Wikipedia list and the 28th president. Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th president, is 5th on the list. 4th on the list is the 3rd president, the Virginian plantation owner and slave owner, Thomas Jefferson. He who said all men are created equal, including the slaves. And here's George Washington. At least he sold his slaves in his will. Thomas Jefferson didn't. It was called manumission. And here are the first 2 on the list. Abraham Lincoln and Franklin Roosevelt, who I pointed out have changed over in 2017. It's a little surprising that Abraham Lincoln is so highly rated, even higher rated now, because he certainly wasn't popular with the people of the South during the Civil War, because he was the president who defeated the Confederacy. I've not given his party. In fact, he stood as a Republican during his first campaign and became the first Republican president. However, during his second campaign, he stood as a national unionist, although he was still really a Republican. He did that because he wanted to emphasize the fact that he was striving to bring unity to the nation after the ravages of the Civil War. In fact, the Confederacy was still intact during the election, and so they didn't take part in the vote, except for Louisiana, who had left the Confederacy and rejoined the Union. The other of the top presidents was Franklin Roosevelt, 5th cousin of Theodore. He was the only president to have served more than 2 terms. In fact, he had 4 terms, although the 4th was very short indeed. He died within 3 months of his inauguration, and his vice president, Harry Truman, took over. But he had guided America through the Depression and the Second World War, and I certainly see him as the most important US president, in spite of his now being number 2. Thank you very much.